but he's not driving erratically. I'm the cop again. Can I stop him constitutionally?
Same answer. No.
No.
You would need more than that to be able to conduct an investigative stop.
Why doesn't that give me reasonable suspicion?
I think merely the fact that he was driving at 3 a.m. and had been pulled over previously for driving under the influence wouldn't be enough. Now, it certainly, if he were swerving or driving improperly in some other way, if he committed a traffic violation or something along those lines, certainly the officer would be well within his rights.
So we can agree our privacy is precious to us, even if we're in a car, right?
I would agree that the Fourth Amendment very thankfully protects us all from unreasonable searches and seizures.
Welcome to American Mindset, where we break down the issues that matter most to America-loving patriots like you. Today, I want to react to a Senate hearing featuring Senator John Kennedy, one of the few senators who actually asks the tough questions when it comes to protecting our freedoms and defending the Constitution. This hearing gave us a lot to think about, especially when it comes to the Fourth Amendment, overreach by the government, and how our laws are interpreted by judicial nominees. Let's watch the video.
On condition that be nice to all of these folks. So with that, Senator Kennedy.
I'm always nice. How many of you worked for Senator Schmidt? All four of you. Is it true that he was suspended 23 times in junior high school in February alone? Look, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not going to ask you how you rule on cases, and I'm not going to ask you about your political beliefs. I just want to know how you think. Let's start with the counselor on the end. Let's suppose I'm a cop, and I'm on duty, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I see somebody driving down the road, many other people around. It's on a Saturday night. Can I stop him?
Just because you see him driving around?
Yeah.
There would need to be more of a basis than that.
So the answer is no.
Correct.
Okay. Let's suppose that I recognize him, and on 3 previous occasions, he's been caught for charged with DWI, but he's not driving erratically. I'm the cop again. Can I stop him constitutionally?
Same answer. No.
No.
You would need more than that to be able to conduct an investigative stop.
Why doesn't that give me reasonable suspicion?
I think merely the fact that he was driving at 3 a.m. and had been pulled over previously for driving under the influence wouldn't be enough. Now, it certainly, if he were swerving or driving improperly in some other way, if he committed a traffic violation or something along those lines, certainly the officer would be well within his rights.
So we can agree our privacy is precious to us, even if we're in a car, right?
I would agree that the Fourth Amendment very thankfully protects us all from unreasonable searches and seizures.
So how come the cops can set up a roadblock and stop everybody when they don't have either reasonable suspicion or probable cause, just to check and see if they have insurance?
So there are limitations on scenarios like that, roadblock cases.
Can they do it first, counsel? I mean,
officers can set up roadblocks if they are applying it based on a neutral and articulable standard, and if that standard relates to something that is specific to automobiles. So they could not stop every car to search.
You're right about the law, but why is not? They don't have reasonable suspicion. They're stopping everybody. They certainly don't have probable cause. It's intrusive. I mean, I can spend 10 minutes in line for them to check my insurance. What's the basis for that being constitutional?
I think the way I would frame it is that the courts have decided that scenarios like that, in scenarios like that, officers would not be acting unreasonably. So they would not be violating somebody's Fourth Amendment rights.
Because the Fourth Amendment
guarantees
prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures.
Correct.
And how do you determine whether something's unreasonable or not?
Well, I think that would very much depend on the situation, the specific facts and the context.
Don't you balance the costs and benefits?
In a scenario like that, yes.
Okay, cool. Judge, what's the rule now that the Supreme Court follows on reapportionment cases? Congressional redistricting.
Congressional redistricting. My understanding, Senator, is that the Supreme Court has decided that that's a political issue, and under the political issue doctrine that essentially the courts really don't have much of anything to say about political redistricting.
If Missouri's legislature gets together and it redraws districts, and they're, let's say, a majority of Democrats in the legislature, so they say, we're going to redraw these districts to benefit Democrats, and we're not going to be reluctant to say so. They say it in front of God and country. Is that okay?
Well, it's pursuant to the Supreme Court precedent. It's legal.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm not going to get to all of you. Counselor? This counselor. Yes, ma'am. Do you think the meaning of the Constitution is immutable?
So I think that the U.S. Supreme Court has said that
I want to know what you think.
So, yeah, my view in terms of like what it is that, you know, my way of looking at the Constitution is to say, what does the text say, and what did it mean at the time that it was passed? And this is something that the U.S. Supreme Court also says. If that's not clear, I think there are other things you can look to, like history and tradition, to decide what the
You
text
look
means.
to what it meant at the time it was passed?
Correct.
What it meant to whom?
To the people who were passing it.
To the people who wrote it?
So I think there are various different ways of looking at this, and I think the U.S. Supreme Court has said that you look at the meaning that the words would have to the public at the time that the Constitution was ratified.
That's right. I'm done. Thank you. Congratulations.
Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate your patience in allowing me to.
First off, Senator Kennedy starts with a bit of humor, mentioning that Senator Schmidt was suspended 23 times in junior high, and apparently 23 of those were in February alone. Classic Kennedy. But jokes aside, this is where the real meat of the discussion begins. Senator Kennedy is known for his ability to cut through the legal jargon and get to the heart of the issue, which is why so many of us respect him. He doesn't let these nominees sidestep the big questions. Now, Kennedy starts off with a simple but powerful question. Can a cop stop someone just for driving around at 3 in the morning? The nominee answers no, and I agree with her. Look, as much as we back the blue, we're not about giving the government a blank check to invade our privacy. The Fourth Amendment exists to protect us from unreasonable searches and seizures, and that includes when we're behind the wheel. Just because it's late at night doesn't mean the government can treat us like criminals. Then, Kennedy asks an even trickier question. What if the driver has been arrested for DUIs before? Can a cop stop him then? Again, the nominee says no, and she's right. Past mistakes don't mean the government gets to violate your rights in the present. This is what separates a free society from a police state. You can't just assume someone's guilty because of their history. That's not how justice works, and thank God the Constitution backs that up. But here's where things get a little murky. Roadblocks. Kennedy asks why it's constitutional for cops to stop every car at a roadblock, even if they don't have reasonable suspicion or probable cause. And you know what? He's right to ask this. Think about it. You're a law-abiding citizen. You pay your taxes, you follow the rules, and then you're stuck in line for 10 minutes while the government checks your insurance. That's intrusive. That's overreach. And yet, the courts have decided it's not unreasonable. Why? Because they claim it's for the greater good. But who decides what the greater good is? That's a slippery slope, my friends. The nominee tries to justify it by saying the courts balance the costs and benefits. Okay, fine. But here's the thing. When you start balancing costs and benefits, who's really paying the price? It's us, the everyday Americans. Our time, our privacy, our freedom. Those are the costs. And the benefits? They're vague at best. Sure, they might catch a few people without insurance, but is that worth trampling on the Fourth Amendment? I don't think so. Then Kennedy shifts gears to congressional redistricting, and this is where it gets political. The nominee explains that the Supreme Court has basically washed its hands of redistricting cases, saying it's a political issue. Now I get it. The courts don't want to get involved in every political squabble. But here's the problem. When state legislatures redraw districts to blatantly favor one party, it undermines the will of the people. And let's be honest, it's not just Democrats doing this. Republicans do it too. But the question is, should it be legal? According to current precedent, it is. And that's something we, as patriots, need to keep an eye on. Finally, Kennedy asked the nominees about how they interpret the Constitution. One of them gives a solid answer. She looks at the original text and what it meant at the time it was written. That's originalism. And it's the only way to make sure the Constitution stays true to its purpose. The Founding Fathers didn't write this document so judges could twist it to fit their personal beliefs. They wrote it to protect our God-given rights, plain and simple. At the end of the day, this hearing reminds us why judicial nominees matter so much. These are the people who will decide what our rights mean in practice. They'll interpret the Constitution, rule on cases, and shape the future of our country. That's why we need judges who respect the original intent of the Founding Fathers and who understand that the government's power should always have limits. So what do you think? Did the nominees give the right answers? Is the Constitution being properly defended in today's courts? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to American Mindset. Together, we can keep the spirit of freedom alive. God bless America.